The dawn was just breaking over the hills surrounding Boston when a quiet, tense stillness gripped the land. Suddenly, sharp gunfire cracked through the morning air, signaling the eruption of a fierce and bloody conflict, one that would become the first major battle of a revolution destined to reshape the world. This was the Battle of Bunker Hill, a defining moment when colonial militias faced the powerful British Army and proved that the fight for American independence had truly begun. In the spring of 1775, the 13 American colonies were on the brink of open war. Months of mounting tension, protests, and clashes with British authorities had brought the colonies to a boiling point. The skirmishes at Lexington and Concord only escalated the conflict, and the British troops found themselves besieged in Boston by thousands of determined colonial volunteers. General Thomas Gage, commander of the British forces in Boston, sought a way to break the colonial siege. His plan was simple, but risky. Seize the high ground that overlooked the city, Bunker Hill and nearby Breed A.S. Hill. Controlling these hills would give the British a tactical advantage, enabling them to bombard the city and lift the siege. The colonial leaders were equally aware of the hill's importance. They understood that if the British captured the heights, the rebellion's chances would dwindle. So, on the night of June 16th, a force of roughly 1,200 colonial militiamen quietly crossed the Charles River and began fortifying Breed S. Hill under cover of darkness. Working through the night, they built crude earthworks and a redoubt, a small fortification made of dirt and timber, preparing to hold off the inevitable British attack. The British were stunned the next morning to find the colonists entrenched so close to their lines. Though outnumbered and poorly equipped, the colonial militia had dug in, ready to defend their position with fierce determination. Among the leaders was Colonel William Prescott, who famously instructed his men to hold their fire until the enemy was within deadly range. "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." This command underscored the colonists' limited ammunition and the need for careful, accurate shots. British forces, numbering about 2,200 well-trained soldiers, advanced in tight, disciplined formations. Confident in their superior training and numbers, they expected a swift victory. But the Americans were no ordinary militia. They were fighting for their homes, their rights, and their freedom. As the British troops moved uphill, the colonists held steady, waiting for the right moment. When the first wave of redcoats came within close range, the colonial muskets roared to life. The concentrated volleys inflicted heavy casualties and slowed the British advance. The battle became a brutal exchange of gunfire and bayonets, with soldiers on both sides fighting desperately for every inch. The British launched multiple charges against the redoubt. Each time, the colonial defenders repelled them, despite dwindling ammunition and mounting losses. The fighting was chaotic and fierce, marked by smoke, shouting, and the relentless roar of muskets. Eventually, the Americans ran low on powder and shot. With the British pressing closer, the colonists engaged in hand-to-hand combat to hold their ground. Though outmatched, their courage and tenacity made the British victory costly and hard-won. After hours of fighting, the British finally overran the redoubt. But the victory came at a high price. British casualties exceeded 1,000 men, including many officers, a devastating toll for what was supposed to be a quick operation. The colonial losses numbered around 400, fewer but significant given their smaller force. The Battle of Bunker Hill was a turning point in the American Revolution. While the British captured the ground, the battle shattered their aura of invincibility. The colonial militias proved they could stand against the professional British Army, and the fight for independence took on a new urgency and legitimacy. News of the battle spread rapidly throughout the colonies, inspiring more men to join the cause and more communities to support the revolution. It became a symbol of American resilience and the unyielding spirit of those who would not back down despite overwhelming odds. At the same time, the battle exposed the weaknesses of the colonial forces: lack of training, shortages of weapons and ammunition, and fragmented command structures posed serious challenges. Leaders like George Washington, soon to be appointed commander of the Continental Army, recognized the need to transform the ragtag militias into a professional fighting force capable of sustained resistance. The British, meanwhile, had to rethink their strategy. The heavy losses forced them to acknowledge the determination and strength of the American rebels. The war, once seen as a mere suppression of unruly subjects, had evolved into a full-scale conflict with uncertain outcomes. The Battle of Bunker Hill left a lasting legacy. It was a brutal baptism by fire for the revolutionaries, a stark reminder of the cost of freedom. But it also proved that ordinary citizens, armed with conviction and resolve, could challenge an empire. The hills of Charlestown still stand today as silent witnesses to the courage and sacrifice of those early patriots. Their story, born in smoke and blood, echoes through American history, a testament to the indomitable will that forged a nation. The bitter smoke of battle still lingered over Breed's Hill as the British forces claimed the ground, but the cost was far greater than anyone had expected. Over 1,000 British soldiers were wounded or killed, a staggering loss that stunned commanders and shook the confidence of the empire. The Americans, though forced to retreat, took heart in the fierce resistance they had mounted against the world's most powerful army. General Thomas Gage realized that this was no ordinary rebellion. The colonial militias were proving to be skilled, courageous fighters willing to sacrifice everything for their cause. The British government, receiving news of the heavy casualties, understood that subduing the colonies would not be swift or easy. For the American colonists, the Battle of Bunker Hill became a powerful symbol. It proved their determination and ability to stand up against overwhelming odds. The rallying cry, "Dante, fire until you see the whites of their eyes," echoed beyond the battlefield, inspiring thousands to join the fight for independence. Yet the battle also revealed hard truths. The colonial forces were disorganized and poorly supplied. Ammunition ran dangerously low during the fight, and many militias lacked proper training and leadership. Recognizing these challenges, leaders like George Washington, appointed commander of the Continental Army shortly after the battle, set out to unify and professionalize the colonial forces. Washington's arrival marked a turning point in the Revolution. The militias began transforming into a more disciplined army, with regular training, better organization, and improved supply lines. These changes would prove critical in the long struggle ahead. The British shifted their tactics as well. Realizing that direct assaults cost too many lives, they focused on tightening blockades, controlling key cities, and seeking alliances with Native American tribes. The war spread beyond Massachusetts, engulfing the eastern colonies and expanding the conflict into a full-scale revolution. Despite setbacks and hardships, the spirit forged at Bunker Hill endured. The battle reminded colonists and the world that the fight for liberty was not a fleeting rebellion, but a determined quest for freedom. In the years that followed, battles would be fought on many fronts, with countless sacrifices. But the legacy of Bunker Hill lived on, a testament to courage, sacrifice, and the belief that even ordinary people could change history. Today, monuments stand on those historic hills as silent witnesses to the bravery of the patriots who fought there. Their story continues to inspire generations to stand for justice and freedom, no matter the odds. The Battle of Bunker Hill was more than a military engagement. It was the birth of a nation's resolve, the first chapter in America's epic story of independence.